Anya, you're seeing in Pakistan, a shift, and not just obviously there are still the threat of infectious disease, but you're seeing non-communicable diseases that used to be most prevalent in the West and wealthier countries, and now you're starting to see them grow with a frenzy in some cases. Talk a little bit about how you manage those twin challenges.
Well, the shift towards non-communicable diseases being the predominant contributors to burden of disease is not just something that's happening in Pakistan. It's a global trend. It's happening all over the world. And in terms of financing for global health, we have to appreciate that non-communicable diseases are not just disruptive in the epidemiological sense of the damage they cause, because we all know that they are the biggest contributors to deaths, to disease, to disability. But they're also equally disruptive in terms of the political, the economic, the societal, and health systems responses needed to address the challenge. Now, if you look at country demand for technical assistance, and Tedros will bear me out on that, NCDs rank amongst the top 3 asks from countries. And in fact, when we were campaigning together 2 years ago, this was the consistent ask from different countries. But as opposed to that, we know that it is not within the realm of competencies of ministries of health, and the existing infectious disease partnerships that we've created to fully respond to the full range of determinants of non-communicable diseases. So it's quite an imperative to have a new set of institutional competencies and financing instruments to deal with non-communicable diseases. And I fundamentally believe that an appropriate response to non-communicable diseases could be revolutionary for public health, just as the HIV response to HIV/AIDS was, more than a decade ago, in terms of institutionalizing the rights-based approach to health and catalyzing the access to medicines dialogue and including affected communities and the civil society in the planning process. I believe that an appropriate response to NCDs could actually change the rules of game on 2 fronts. Firstly, this whole aspect of the whole of government approach and the multisectoral approach to dealing with public health. And secondly, the whole piece around engagement with the private sector. So NCDs can be quite transformative in
Sonia, I know you wanted to jump in on this.
Yes, I think the trust issue that you just mentioned is part of a much bigger problem, because when you talk about global health and its sustainability and the way forward, we have to appreciate that today we are living in a world where the value of international institutions and the trust in multilateral system is wavering. We are, in fact, seeing a scenario where many of the cross-cutting agendas, such as family planning and reproductive health and sexual health, the value of investment in them is being contested. And Peter Sands just reiterated the wide-ranging ramifications of that setback. And on the other hand, I think paradoxically, there has never been such a time where the value of international institutions and the imperative to invest in them has been more imperative. I mean, I can go on and on with a list of things. For instance, relevant to the health sector, there are 3 risks that threaten to wipe out the development gains of the last century: pandemics, antibiotic resistance, non-communicable diseases. Tedros will tell you that universal health coverage is his top priority and the top priority of many countries where and for very good reasons. But in order to institutionalize universal health coverage, you have to play health with a very different stack of cards. You have to engage the private sector in many different ways. Our colleague here will tell you that precision medicine is likely to become the default option very soon because of a number of different transformations. And, there's this whole technology piece and how institutions outside of the healthcare system are taking the lead on providing solutions for universal health coverage. These are financial institutions and online retail actors. And in order to institutionalize and reap the benefits of all these transformations, you need new standards, new rules, you need workforce realignment, you need stepping up and change in regulatory capacity. And you essentially need stepping up of capacity, and all that is not going to happen if we will not invest in international institutions in the multilateral system, which are consistently under attack.
Yeah.
So this whole question about which country is going to take a lead in raising its voice and becoming the world's conscience, and which country has the fiscal strength, the fiscal ability, the credibility, and the spine to raise the voice are becoming hugely important in this discourse, not just of around global financing for health, but also global development financing. And I think these are big-ticket things around which there needs to be a dedicated discourse.
Yeah, we've been using these mechanisms to finance bridges and tunnels. So, Sonia,
Three quick reflections on what's being discussed. Firstly, this conversation is veering towards the importance of the global funds, the infectious disease funds, and I think that there are no two opinions about it. They've been enormously impactful. They need to be supported. But the reality of the matter is that conversations about graduation and transition are already happening, and they're also happening at the country level. So it is important within that context to ascertain where the financial vulnerabilities are, and to be very clear about creating the transition frameworks well ahead of time, because even if we're looking at a 5-year horizon, we should be prepared with the transition frameworks. We should be prepared with very explicit and predictable co-financing arrangements, because these need to be sorted out ahead of time. Secondly, there's this conversation about non-communicable diseases. I don't think that there is an appetite for a new global fund-like initiative for NCDs. We all know that. But I think when we talk about a new financing instrument and a new architecture for non-communicable diseases, for which there is ample justification, we may be talking about an explicit integration mandate, because that exists at several points across the whole spectrum of health systems and global health institutions. For example, at a country level, non-communicable disease medicines can be included into national essential drug lists. The several waves of surveys that USAID, that the UNICEF, and that the World Bank supports at a population-based level could integrate modules for NCDs. That does not necessitate creating vertical structures. For instance, PEPFAR and the Global Funds for AIDS, TB, and Malaria have done remarkably well in terms of creating primary healthcare systems for chronic care. And you layer this up with the online capabilities that retail institutions and the banking systems are creating, and there's a perfect justification for including NCDs in that mix. So we do not have to create a global fund worth X billion and with 400 staff in Geneva. The NCDs piece could be addressed, number one, with an explicit integration mandate and financing instruments around that. And of course, as Tedros mentioned, there is this whole other piece about the whole of government approach around tobacco, food systems, physical activity, alcohol, which needs to be mobilized through different instruments which are not resource intensive. Paradoxically, they can generate resources for prevention activities through earmark levies, as we all know. And just a 30-second response, I cannot resist to what, Ngozi, you said. I think tax can be one of the most important innovative instruments, because we talk about debt swaps and we talk about bonds and the rest of it. But we have to realize from a country vantage point that anti-tax evasion efforts, anti-money laundering efforts, and anti-corruption efforts have perfect synergy. Because the monies that are whisked away by tax evasion, on the one hand, are used for money laundering and terrorist financing, and on the other hand, they take away the money that is needed to invest in human capital investment.